Okay, so Dawntrail maintenance is happening, and to celebrate not being able to play FF14, we're going to talk about FF14. This is a ranking PowerPoint of all of Final Fantasy XIV's boss fights, apostrophe all of them here, meaning boss fights available as normal trials and normal raids. There's 96 of them. This is going to be a 3-part thing. It's a PowerPoint presentation. I'm not paying a video editor for, like, you know, full video editing, etc., etc. This is being done live on Twitch. I will be responding to and chatting back and forth with people. I will try to recite what they said for posterity, but, like, if things seem to come out of nowhere, that's why. Thanks for coming and hanging out, whether you know the game or not. Let's get into this. Before we begin, there is a bunch of things to note. One, there was a script here, and it's gone now. I had a script. I felt like I was repeating myself a lot, so I'm actually going to just kind of focus on talking about the bits of each fight that I particularly feel are worth addressing off the cuff. I don't know. I've got a whole lot of thoughts about this game. I should be able to pull it off. Spoiler warning is in effect. This covers bosses up to and including the Gilded Araya at 6.55. If you are here and really care about the identity of bosses and stuff in this game and have not finished that, maybe you shouldn't. I will understand. This video will be available in VOD and YouTube form later. It's okay. I'm only covering normal trials and normal raids. This means everything you can get in normal raid roulette, everything you can get in trials roulette, and I am also including the 4-man trials from A Realm Reborn for this. I am not covering Earth's Fountain Memora Misera. I am not counting extreme trials. I am not counting savage raids. For extreme trials and savage raids, there's already videos out there by people covering them. Like, and they can honestly probably tell you more about that. I'm not counting alliance raids, etc., etc. This list already has 96 fights as is, so yeah, I'm not covering stuff like Delubrum, Regane, Savage, etc. Partially because I still haven't done that, and I should fix that at some point. Largely, I am ranking them based on the perspective of somebody who has been here 10 years and playing since A Realm Reborn's launch. And in the form that they are today, I can't... Like, most of these haven't been actively modified, but I can't go back and play, like, pre-nerf versions of them and stuff, so... Where it matters, I am ignoring the fact that some of the raids happen at low levels. I know that restricts, you know, job rotations and can make some less fun, but how much that will affect your job really depends. A Reaper's gonna hate playing a level 30 fight, while a healer is still going to be doing the same damage rotation at level 30, so, like, whatever. And I'm also skipping the opening trash in the Alexander stages and the Foss. That's not the actual boss fight, and there's no real point to discussing it. Like, there's nothing interesting to remark on. Finally, fight me. I am doing this live. Feel free to disagree with me as much as you want, or agree, whatever you want. If you're viewing this afterwards in YouTube comments, tell me which fight showed up on this bottom third of the list or whatever that pissed you off the most. Go for it. Faust was a real boss for a lot of people. Momentarily, for like 5 seconds. And then he wasn't Savage, but we're not talking about Savage. I did a scoring system for these. It's loose, it's opinion-based, but there's 30 potential points. So I'll go over the categories real quick. Design, there's a whole bunch of ways that a fight can be good. Like, it can just be, like, in the progression of the fight, use of multiple phases for variety, integration of story beats, evolution of mechanics, etc., etc. For the design category, I am including the things that you may not necessarily see today, that you would only see in the minimum item level runs and stuff. Just because I think that a lot of that is kind of cool, and there is fights that were designed to be cool that are going to be held back in other categories today, because that just isn't the fight anymore. So that is an exception compared to how it was when I did my dungeon ranking video. Danger. I like my fights to be a train wreck. Based on... But the thing is like, I have played this game for 10 years. In the grand scheme of content of this game, none of the trials in normal raids exceed like a 2 or 3 out of 10 in difficulty. But that's no fun to give them all like a 0 in danger. So this is based on the chance that any given random newcomer to the fight eats the floor. With a 5 danger basically indicating that, like, hey, it is realistically possible that you will queue into this and see party wipes, and a 0 being, oh, I don't know how you managed to die in this fight, but good job, you must have been trying. The fun factor. Fun means a lot of different things. In this case, I chose what is the actual reality of the fight. How engaging is it? How varied is it? How much are you actually doing things with it? So, a 0 in fun is basically me saying, this is a striking dummy. Like, I just don't do anything in this fight. Sometimes literally don't do anything in this fight. And a 5 is generally, like, engaging and varied and active, etc., etc. I hope you understand what I mean when I say fun there. Visuals, arenas, boss models, spell effects, animations, anything for the visual flair counts. The standards are pretty high. Trials and raids get a lot of visual work attention in this game. I don't know why the music looping doesn't actually seem to work in LibreOffice today, but okay. Speaking of music looping, audio. Primarily music, since a lot of trials and normal raids have unique music, but I did provide like bonus bumps if I particularly cared for the sound effect and or the voice work in the fight. And then finally, I gave a +1 in a category if it was the best in the expansion, and a -1 in the category if it was the worst in the expansion. Even if I'm looking at it from today, I think the best and worst parts of each expansion and fight probably deserve some recognition. They mostly kind of bundled down towards the lower and top end of the rankings anyway. I didn't have to do this, but I decided to do this, and so they're worked in. Okay. Let's get started. Where is my list on my phone so that I can keep track of that and know what I'm about to introduce to you guys and actually see the scores before they drop in? I'm curious to know what you guys think number 96 is going to be. Feel free to drop it in chat. In about 10 seconds, I'm going to push the button and actually just reveal what it is. Also, my apologies if you hear the sound of me drinking during this. I will need to stay hydrated. A few different answers, interestingly. Number 96 and number 95. Listen, okay. So I'm putting the Chimera's 96 and the Hydra's 95, and they both just completely fucking suck. The Chimera is literally the Cutter's Cry dungeon boss, with this one little trick that doesn't matter anymore. And the Hydra is technically a new fight, but you'd be forgiven for forgetting that, because it's basically just a bland dungeon boss level fight that has like a one mechanic and I guess an ad is around, and they're both really awful fights. The Hydra, I think, is the worst design because its one mechanic doesn't even have any understandable explanation for how you're supposed to know it. I hate the music in both fights, in that I am just really tired of this fight, but at least Chimera has slightly more iconic sound effects. Oh, the Hydra was supposed to be -1 design, not -1 danger. I screwed that up on the screen. The Chimera, by comparison, is just effortless and can't even like stun your healers into wandering through damage puddles and stuff. And the arena is just so ugly, and it's a reused model, and just there's yeah, realistically, they are both at the bottom. You could put them in any order. Whenever there was a tie, I got to make up my mind, and I dislike the Relic Reborn Chimera slightly more than the Hydra. But, like, slightly. Just a little bit. Just eensy beensy bit. Okay. 94. The robot already mentioned that I must have been skipping trash, and so I must be skipping this fight. Yeah, no, this fight's trash. I don't completely hate this on the same level. The concept of having a gauntlet fight where each part of the gauntlet has different threats, and also you have, like, the Gobwalker, where one character basically replaces their class with unique job actions for this. Okay, that isn't the worst concept. The problem is that, at least in the normal version of this fight, the differences between the ads barely matter, especially now, and the Gobwalker actually almost reduces its rotation below healer levels of complexity, because there's like one button that's actually worth using even when you do this fight completely as intended. Like, oh no, there's the bombs to hookshot away. You don't care about that anymore. You don't care about keeping the Yagdolls separate anymore. It's a mess. Like, technically there's a little bit of potential damage if, like, one of your healers jumps in a Gobwalker or something and the other one just brain deads. The fight is boring looking. It's just got Locust as a theme, which every fight that has Locust I kind of just gave a low audio score just on the basis that they're all sharing it. And that is a problem kind of unique to a handful of Alexander fights, is sharing music. It's... yeah, no, this fight has not aged well at all. Not even remotely. Okay. 93. And 92. It's kind of funny that both the Ifrit fights end up right next to each other. The thing is, there's very little merit in either fight, really, at the end of the day. But I will say the normal version, at least, is a halfway decent, okay, this is the first boss battle of the game. It at least has a little bit of damage on the tanks. It at least has a DPS check you can't really ignore. It is testing your baseline competency. I don't hate that about it. But there's so little in the way of mechanics. Like, it's cool that the presentation is actually something, although this is also the bare minimum that I expect visually from the fights in this game at this point. Like, there isn't really much to say about Ifrit. Ifrit Hard is slightly spicier because the dives can kill people, but is otherwise the previous fight but slightly more, and so I actually give it a worse design score. Yeah. It is what it is. Ifrit's just too basic to really nail it. Also, I really don't care for Primal Judgment. This track that's playing right now is just... it's passable, I guess. But, like, in the grand scheme of this thing, passable is not good enough. Too basic to nail it. That wasn't even intentional. I'm sorry. They said it was the trendsetter for the design of this game. Yes. And, like, I actually still have a small fondness for Ifrit, because getting to Ifrit was the point in the original game where I'm like, okay, hold on, I like this game. This is cool. But, yeah. In the grand scheme of things, that nostalgia doesn't really earn the points. Okay. Next up, 91. Alt-Right. Let nobody say I'm letting Final Fantasy V bias interfere with my decisions. Though I don't know if I could do much to, like, even with bias, to pretend this is a great fight. It's super basic, especially by the standards of where you get to this fight. Like, it isn't the worst looking, but a big thing is that this is in Stormblood, and it is thus being contrasted, like, in ranking kind of more to Stormblood fights. And so the fact that this is a basic bitch is just not really enough. I have a fondness for this fight because it was so easy on Savage that, like, I cleared it on a second pull in Party Finder. And that did get me back into Savage raiding after the whole of Alexander happened, but, like, I don't know. There's just not much I can say positively about this fight, other than the effect it had on Savage on me. It's passable, but by Stormblood it should be a lot better than passable. Hey Dustin, welcome to the screen. You haven't missed much, just a couple of the absolute bottom entries. Tomonaki said Savage was as difficult as they kind of expected normal to be. Yeah, the Savage version of this fight almost could have been the normal difficulty version of this fight. Actually, the best thing I'll say about the Alt-Right is that I like it as a mount. I like the Danger Noodle mount, but the danger in Alt-Right was the Tank Buster killing a second person who happened to be close. The fun thing is these days, that doesn't even happen. Other classes will just shrug off the Twin Buster. Okay. Number 90. The Oppressor. Because speaking of first fights and raids that just don't really hold up, I mean, the thing is I kind of, sort of like the pieces of this fight that are gone. I like when you had to actually fight two of them at once, and they were doubling down on the mechanics. I like the old puzzle of shrinking down the missile and stuff. But it is kind of like the same basic 3 attacks on permanent loop for the entire fight, even with that. And it's worse today. Like, the thing about it today is it does like 2 AoEs at your party, and then you push it past the threshold where it summons its buddy, and you burn them down both. There just isn't much of a fight left. Somehow still more fight than the Goblins rush, but like, yeah, this is... Okay, to be fair, everywhere once in a while, you will run into a group whose DPS is so bad that they actually run into an issue. Like, I did get into it a couple days ago and almost see a wipe on this fight. But even then, it was only almost. Yeah, I have better memories of when this fight first came out. Is like, oh, okay, they've started introducing more interesting, like, normal difficulty fights, and that's where the 4 design is. I just don't think it carries up much higher than that in retrospect, and it just doesn't stand up today. Anyway, 89 is this loser. Nabrialas. You know, that dude you forgot is there in ARR that actually has a whole trial. Also, you probably forgot what he actually does other than, like, the 2 big transition mechanics. Because he doesn't really do a lot. He's mostly just a striking dummy most of the time. And then you get to go play catch with a bunch of alternating ball colors, and I will say, I do still think the whole part where you get sucked into the rift and you get the extended timer buffs and stuff, like, there's some cool mechanisms going on there, and it's not, like, it's not trivial to actually beat this fight. It is a little bit dangerous. People die during the orb catching phase because they don't understand the mechanics. Sometimes a party just eats the floor during the inverted phase, but, like, yeah, he is absolutely awful if you're on melee. He's uninteresting even if you're on ranged most of the time. There's some neat concepts to the fight, but, like, eh. I love Limit Break being blown in phase 1. So the funny thing is like, yes, but also, you really don't need Limit Break for the Ethereal Tear as long as people actually that can do damage target the one thing in the phase that takes damage. So yeah, it's... I see this is not a controversial opinion, and I didn't expect it to be. Everybody forgets Nabrial is for good reason. Number 88 is going to mark the first of another expansion to show up on the list. Erathonius. His mother would be very proud of him. So here's the thing, is I don't, like, hate this fight. It has a little bit more going on than some of the other fights around him, like, on this list. But by Endwalker standards, this fight makes you fall the fuck asleep. He spends so long winding up all of his attacks, and they're so basic that it's just really simple to do. Like, technically he can kill you, I guess. The dartboard phase is kind of neat, but, like, this fight is largely a very big, like, oh, just follow one person who knows what they're doing and you're probably going to be safe from 90% of mechanics. Like, yeah, thematically it's cool. Like, you'll notice I gave it a 5 in design because it is doing a bunch of different things with some thematics in it. But it doesn't really, like, meaningfully grow them, and it isn't super innovative, and just... It would place at least a few spots higher on this list if it weren't for the fact that it is coming from Endwalker, and thus takes a couple of the penalties for the lowest points in Endwalker to me. But, you know, I have the demerit system in place, so... I go in and out of really liking this boss theme. Part of it, I think, is that there's so many good boss themes in Pandemonium. Also, just a lot of it is kind of just low energy and not super special. I don't know. It's fine. Okay. 87 is a fight that I've seen placed as the worst in the game by some people. I don't know why it didn't do the fade-in, but it did. Okay. Ultros and Typhon. The way this fight was originally designed, I actually really like. The first half of it is a really interesting puzzle that had to be solved to avoid a party wipe. The second half of it is a chaotic rain of variable, unpredictable AoEs that also has your off-tank on Typhon constantly getting pushed around and needing to reposition and stuff. There's a lot of really cool stuff going on in the fight. None of it matters anymore. Actually doing this fight today is like 30 seconds of mechanics, and then the DPS start the imp phases, where half your party does literally nothing because it doesn't matter anymore. And then by the time the imp phases are done, the fight is over. That's kind of bad. I'm really sorry. The visual, technically it's reused models. I don't straight up hate it. I probably could have given it a 1. The audio, it is the original track, is the reason that I have it as a 0. It's not an original remix for 14. It's just... This is one of those fights that they nerfed out of necessity, and I do think they should have nerfed it, because otherwise it would be a 5. It would be like the hardest trial in the game still, probably, because it literally is reliant on a puzzle that is not obvious how to do it. Although I think you can just surecast things today, so maybe not. But yeah, no. This fight, I want to see this fight get reworked someday. I almost want them to just take the imp mechanic out at this point. But yeah. Let's move on to 86. Catastrophe. Right after the Danger Noodle, you get the entire Danger Spaghetti. I don't hate this fight. I think it does have an interesting core gimmick in the whole float mechanic. The thing about it is, like, for the most part, the answer to the float mechanic was use it within a specific range of time. The first half of the fight is just use it sometime before the mechanic that is checking for it, and the other half of the fight is use it between two mechanics that are really obvious at that point. And what's left isn't necessarily a whole lot interesting. Like, there's the fleshy members mechanic that is kind of fun. There's, if you've never seen it, when you get tossed into the air, you can see the Tonberry. I think the biggest thing that holds this fight back for me is that you just don't see a lot of the mechanics of the fight anymore. It's very possible you reach the, like, you finish this fight before you even get to the point where the full design of this fight starts to emerge because of how long it takes to get to that point where you have to think about where to use float. And other than that, the mechanics are relatively simple. The visuals aren't so great. I don't really care for the boss model or like the spell effects or especially just the arena. So it's just kind of eh. It wasn't necessarily super great when it came out, and I don't think it has aged particularly well, basically. Again, nobody blame me of FF5 biases. Number 85. Lakshmi is, I mean, okay. She is a really pretty fight. I love the visuals of this fight. I love the Bollywood musical number. I think this is the first fight on the list with actual voice acting in it. So, like, presentationally, this is great. The biggest thing that kills me about this fight is Lakshmi has two things she does. One of them are really obvious wind-ups where you press your duty action button to do something. And the other ones are insanely long wind-ups for the world's most basic AoEs. I don't know what happened when they were designing this fight, but every time she marks people to drop AoEs, it feels like that could have lasted, like, the delay between her marking people and them positioning and it actually going off, they could have cut that down to like a third of the amount of time that takes, and it would have been fine. But it's really, really long for some reason, and it leaves a fight that is super slow. there's bits and pieces I kind of want to like. I like the fact that, like, her ultimate either outright kills you or fully heals you, because Lakshmi was originally a healer, but, like, yeah, it's just... Funniest in Rage? I think that Enrage only exists on Extreme. I could be wrong. But... Faustio said Susanoo was the first with the voice lines. So Lakshmi is the first on this list with the voice lines, and Susanoo was far from the first boss fight to have voice lines. So... Lakshmi is a fight that I often see really low on people's lists, like whether they're discussing the original or the Extreme, and like, yeah, this fight's just kind of missing something. Uh, 84. Chatternook. Affectionately referred to as the Bob Ross fight. I don't necessarily hate this fight in concept. Like, the core idea of he tethers to paintings to channel big spells, and you need to counter by making your own paintings is cool. The problem is there isn't a puzzle to it. Like, the answer to how to defend yourself is go paint the painting in front of the one he's channeling, and that's 80% of the fight solved right there. The rest of it is super basic. Like, oh no, it's chasers. Oh no, it's a tank buster. Like, there's technically run away from the boss mechanics, I guess, which, if you're not melee, you may just not even be moving for. Like, yeah, it is cute that you get to hop on the plane, and it is cute that somebody gets to hop on Typhon and do a slightly more engaging mechanic. That's one person gets to hop on Typhon. No penalties on this list. We're getting out of that initial rush of penalized fights. But I just don't think Chatternook necessarily has enough going on for it to, like, really stand up that tall. Okay. 83. It's him. Specifically, this is the first fight with Gilgamesh, the battle on the big bridge. So, there's two things I think this fight does well. The first is the audio. Not only is this a kick-ass remix of Battle on the Big Bridge, but also, he's voice acted for some reason. I don't know why they voice acted Gilgamesh during this, but he is. And second, I actually don't hate the design of this fight. There's the confusion mechanics, the transformation mechanics, which are shorter-lived, the whole, like, breaking it into multiple phases, the callbacks specifically to FF5, with the whole structure of the fight, and, like, him faking defeat in the start of the fight and everything. There's parts of this I really like. But the fight is an absolute joke in terms of danger. It really doesn't actually get you doing much the whole time because of the fact that it's such a joke. And, like, the fight's visual style is, oh look, an Ishgardian bridge, we haven't seen those before. I don't hate this fight, but, like, there just isn't much to it in practice outside of those couple things where it's like, the good points are alright, the bad points are eh. Sage said, it's funny when both healers get transformed and then people start dying. I don't feel like I've ever seen that happen. It's not out of the question, but I feel like the transformation phase is supposed to hit everybody but one tank and one healer. And that's if you see the mass transform. You may not even see it, so. Okay. 82 and 81. Garuda. So, like, I don't hate the Garuda fights. I want to note, actually, even though we're still at, like, 82nd place, we're already at 10 out of 30 on the scoring system. It's just kind of hard to find the things to really say and dig into it. Like, there is the interesting puzzle in the first half of the fights, where you have to protect the pillars and stuff, and that gets you doing a little bit more and trying to keep her away from hitting them. There is, like, yeah, the hard mode has the sisters. I guess. It sounds weird to say there isn't that much to say about the Garuda fight, because it's more complex than the fights that had come before it. But, yeah, you'll notice on the scores that I have the normal version of the fight being spicier than the hard mode version. The hard mode can still get you. I still see people somehow try to insist on pulling the ads phase right in the middle of the arena, where the tornado keeps spawning over and over and over again. I'm not sure how people don't register that. But in normal mode, you kind of actually have to pay attention to and respect the mechanics, and just probably could have given the audio a higher score here. I don't know. I just don't feel that strongly about Garuda. Oh boy, we got a lot to go. How about number 80? Leviathan. So, I want to mention that I remember having a discussion with somebody in the early days of FF14, where I was talking about how we needed to start implementing an item level cap on things. And the reason being was that certain fights were getting absolutely trivialized, and one of the ones that I pointed to was Leviathan. The thing about that is that the response that I got back from that person was, Leviathan was never that interesting of a fight, and I had to kind of sit there and be like, like, it does interesting things. The environment's really cool, the knocking the boat around is really interesting, but him slamming the boat doesn't actually mean anything beyond visual flair in the standard version of the fight. The music's fine-ish. I like the first phase, but not so much the second phase. There's, like, ads and little things, like which one you have to target mattering, but, like, Leviathan's kind of an The robot said, glad to see Levy and Levy hard, not back-to-back. That's because there is no Levy normal. This is Leviathan, unless you're referring to the other Leviathan. Yeah, it's only Ifrit, Titan, and Garuda who have the two, like, the 4-man and 8-man versions, so. Yeah, I feel like the walls could get knocked off the boat in normal. It would be absolutely fine for the walls to get knocked off the boat in normal. You'll see, like, 1 or 2 more slams after the walls, after that point where it would happen. It would be fine. Okay. 79. Living Liquid is a boss that I would like to be able to put higher. However, he makes it very difficult. Like, the core idea of the fight is you have 3 different, like, phases that cycle through at the start of the fight. And then after a certain form, he goes into his final phase, where he kind of does a little bit of everything. First off, you never see past the hand phase anymore in random groups. You just don't. And the first 3 phases have like 1 mechanic each. And that's like it. And then it's basically the exact same mechanics again. Or rather, exact same mechanic again for the final phase, but now with magnetism tethers added. Which you'll see like once, and then he's dead. I think the rotating through the different phases is interesting. I do think the individual mechanics of each phase are distinctive. Like, the ads and the tornado phase and stuff, and how that works. I think that's only really been reused, like, once in the game. With, like, you being encouraged to CC them and stuff to stop them from reaching the center, but, like... Necromancer said, "We love magnets." I do too! I wish I saw more of them in this fight. I have... The robot is saying, "You see Tornado now?" I've never seen Tornado happen in this. Or really just must take some awful DPS to happen. I do wish that I could put Pepsi Man higher, but he's just not getting it. Oh, Bear said, "There's a tornado." Exactly. There's a phase you never see of this fight anymore. Okay. 78. It's Titan. Specifically, 4-man Titan. I do think the whole, like, progressively shrinking arena stuff is still really neat and pretty unique to this fight. Most other transforming arenas that lose space actually, like, come back over the course of the fight. Like, and thematically, that fits. And I do like the fact that he is probably the first fight you are running into that just has hard KO attacks. Like, Tomonaki mentioned this, but this one nearly caused some folks to stop playing. Back at launch, when there was an extra, like, 0.2 seconds of ping that everybody was playing under before they updated the net code and stuff, and before people had really gotten used to the idea that, like, oh, the cast bar ending is when the mechanic is kicked in and all that sort of stuff, this fight was really brutal. It's still not trivial on normal. It's still fairly basic. If you've really gotten a grasp of the fundamentals of the game, it shouldn't be too hard until your healer leaves the floor. But he has gotten better since. Obviously, I like the music and the multiple tracks that are here. I don't really care for the visual design of the arena and the spell effects and stuff in this fight, but, like, yeah, no, Titan's fine. He is the best of the ARR, like, trio primals, by far. Okay. The music has faded out on its own, which is incredibly rude of it. Let's do 77. Once again, the fade-in didn't kick in. Here's Hegemony. So there is a thing. Endwalker kind of has a bit of a problem with a lot of its fights being, like, very much built out of sort of the same pieces. Which can be fine. Like, a fight doesn't have to be super novel to be fun, but Hegemony has almost nothing. Like, there's a little bit of fun in the mechanics. There's, like, the parasite thing, but, like, her mechanics are really simple and straightforward. They can be deadly if players are screwing them up. But I just don't think there's much going on in this fight at all. Like, the parasite mechanic is... the music kind of carries this fight, and the fact that like it is just executing in an Endwalker level. Yoshida said that one thing they want to work on in Dawntrail is bringing back a lot of the originality in the fights. And while I think you can do a lot original without it, like Hegemony is just such a standard fight to me. I just... Oh yeah, I think that is Sage getting hit in that screenshot. For the robot, the Savage version of this one gave our party a little bit of trouble because of Kachechia. Like, that one just... That specific mechanic was basically the entire fight for most people. But that's the Savage version, and not this version, which is... eh. 76. Ramu is a fight where I really like the visuals of it. And I think there's some kind of interesting, like, individual mechanisms here. Busting friends out of stun, the tether and the orbs and stuff. But that's, like, it. Or, like, honestly. I think I've got this fight having a couple points on the danger meter because of the fact that, like, people will not necessarily pay full attention to the mechanics, and most importantly, people will lose track of where the tank is, and this is one of the rare fights in Trials Roulette where the tank buster will actually kill other people. Ramu's fine. I'm gonna note again, we're already, like, even though we're at 76, we're at a total of 12 points. I don't, like, hate the fights at this point onwards. They're just a little bit sub-average. And by sub-average, I mean, technically, average is like another 20 to 30 points up, but... yeah, I have the danger where it is because I see the occasional person eat floor on here. But... yeah, I don't think it's quite excelling at anything good enough. But I don't hate Ramu. Uh, 75th. The Manipulator is our first, like, raid, like, boss. Haha! Leg. So I do think there's a lot of cool stuff going on in this fight. It has a lot of unique mechanisms, largely based around, like, he is stationary, but his attacks are going to force the party to move to protect other members of the party. And then that gets complicated in the final phase when Nisi happens. And all of a sudden, if your healers are tripping on people, they're either passing on poisons or straight up killing each other. Plus, you know, the whole, like, yoink people out of the fight, etc., is kind of fun. Some of the visual effects are alright. Metal is a pretty baller track, I won't lie. And the fight actually has some great sound design, too. I think the big thing is just that, like, the modern version of the fight, if you are dying in this fight, it's because people are messing around with the scene. It's just over so fast, you won't even see a lot of what's going on. The robot said, touching your friends is like, I consent, Nisi, I don't. Jomanaki said, I expected this lower, not gonna lie, but also Nisi. Yeah, it's still not showing up high, but I do still have some respect for, like, the core aspects of the fight that we maybe don't see as much anymore. Okay. 74. I believe this is the highest of the ARR primals in terms of your first encounter with them. And it is, in fact, Shiva. Like, she's kind of the first of the primals that is designed, or was designed, in sort of what would become the framework of a lot of boss fights in the game. Like, first phase with some mechanics, including, like, the Shiva circles, which technically are the Titan bombs with different markers, but people remember them as the Shiva circles. The visuals are really nice. You do a phase 1 with the base mechanics, and then the ad phase, and then there's the ultimate that goes off, where I didn't get a better shot of her stepping on people, but I tried. And then comes the final phase, where she spices up what happened in the first part with a little bit more extra. And, like, yeah, the fight's got a really nice visual pop. The music is pretty nice. I do, like, I probably should have given it a higher audio score. I'm fine with Oblivion, and there is, like, the snap. But I will admit, I'm also a fan of Footsteps in the Snow over Oblivion these days. Yeah, Shiva's fine. I wish the weapon swapping mechanic mattered more. Like, it does matter in the extreme, because you have to pay more attention to what's going on as a result. And it is really funny when tanks try to do the extreme thing and end up getting the entire party tank busted. But, like... yeah, that's Shiva. She's fine. Let's go to... Is that our first entry from... Yeah, so 73 marks our first entry from Shadowbringers. I bet you completely forgot about the Void Walker. And if you didn't, it's because you remember Spell and Waiting. Which, to be fair, I actually really think Spell and Waiting is really cool. The idea of casting a spell, showing you all the warnings for it, but not actually having it go off until several seconds later, is really cool. I don't think necessarily that much is actually done with it. And in a lot of ways, it actually just slows the pace of this fight down a lot. Because it's like, especially when she's introducing it, it's like, she's casting the spell. Here's the marker. She's casting the spell. Nothing happens. Tick, tick, tick. Oh, there it is! Like, there's some decent visual stuff with the transforming arena and the giant ant arm, which I didn't get a great shot of. And, like, it's still a Shadowbringers raid fight. All of them you're going to find are a little bit spicy and are still decent at times. But I do think the Voidwalker's, like, the most of them. Interestingly, by the way, you'll note that this is the lowest Shadowbringers fight. It doesn't have the single worst category in anything in Shadowbringers to me. I have other fights that are the bottom of each of these. Just, they also have other strengths that carry them up higher. Sage said, my only complaint is that there's exactly one time where the individual AoEs and the stack go off at the same time, and I wish I did that more. Exactly. That's the thing, is Spell and Waiting is just like, it's just not used to interesting effect in the actual normal version of this fight. Uh, 72. It's Dr. Wily. I mean, quick thinks all thoughts. First off, I apologize. I do not have any shots of people getting put in gay baby jail. I'm not sure how I missed getting screenshots of those. Second off, that is most of the fight's design, but I think that is kind of a fun design of him, like, doing mini phases where, like, okay, now get distracted by some ads while I put some people in role-related jails. That's That's cute and fun. There is the whole running around with the cat, and the giant death ball. Like, this fight is not free. It's not completely overgeared. It still does a little bit of spice. People still get themselves killed or get caught in the jails because they're not paying attention or just don't know what they're doing. I will say, visually, I have to hand extra points to this one because while all the Alexandrian arenas kind of blend together, the arena for this one, I still want a house here. It's the only part of this fight's visuals I really care about, but I still want a house here. Also, I have this as the worst audio in Heavensward, because this is supposedly the antagonist of this story. Like, Quickthinks is the antagonist of the Alexander plotline. Why is it just playing Locust for him? Like he's some random trash mob? Aubert said he is trash, though. I mean, yeah, kinda. And we will not leave Alexander as we head to 71. Refurbisher. See, Refurbisher gets metal as a theme song. And you probably looked at this dude and went, wait, what fight is this? This is the fight where you have to deliberately reactivate things to lead them over, to kill them in places, to get them melted. That's a fun core mechanic. And I think the whole idea that the fight penalizes you by having the boss get stronger for the failed mechanics until it can eventually reach a point of instant wiping you is, like, interesting. It's a very unique core mechanic. It doesn't necessarily go hard enough with it. Like, I want to note the visual score in this. I gave the visuals a bit of a point because I love just the arena sinking into the magma is cool, and like the heat indicator effects and stuff. Also, yeah, this fight does kill people from time to time because, you know, there is the one phase in the middle of the fight where the Faust shows up, and if he doesn't die in time, which that's not usually the issue, but like if he doesn't die before wherever the tank decided to pull him to, that just causes an instant wipe. This is a fight where individuals are not likely to die, but the entire raid might just eat crap. Also, yeah, Refurbisher himself is cool looking. His animations are really minimal, and the things he does aren't necessarily so great, but yeah, that's where I'm at with Refurbisher. Flux said mentors hate this one fight. Necromancer said, very cool fight, never wanted to do it again. 70. Time for Greg 2. So, I'm kind of sad to see that this fight doesn't also have voice acting, but I think it is a better fight. There's more mechanics in the first half of the fight with Enkidu, where you have to do, like, you have to handle tethers, transformations, actually have to do things in order to essentially disarm bombs. You're taking care of two enemies. And then the actual big keep fight itself, like, I remember thinking at the time that it was kind of an intense fight when it came out. Like, the different steadily increasing patterns and mixes of the AoEs, the iron chains, the dragon heads, which they're a joke now, but I used to remember parties wiping due to failing to manage to do enough damage to the dragon heads in time. It's an overall solid-ish fight. that is actually still fairly fun today, I think. It's not necessarily hard. The key danger of the DPS check is more or less gone. The visual style, like, I probably could have given it a point for the new models for Gilgamesh and Enkidu, but it's also just reusing Amdapor Keep. Adio said, it's funny to see how relatively simple fights are from back then compared to now. Yeah, like, this is not necessarily a complex fight, but it's still fun, because it's doing enough of those basics well enough and rapid enough, and yeah. I always thought this was one of the funner fights out of the Realm Reborn. Okay, let's go to number 60 Nice. It's Lame Brick's Strike Box, or, if you've forgotten what that is, Alexander Stage 10. So this fight has a really neat mechanism of the various trap panels around the floor that, like, the goal is to avoid setting them off, and sometimes he'll set them off manually, and sometimes your party members will get knocked around into them. That actually makes for a pretty interesting core mechanism. He doesn't really have much beyond that, but it is an interesting core mechanism. You do get the fun, like, the bulldozer mid-phase. That's alright. He's a little bit spicy still. The biggest thing is if people don't know where to fight him, i.e. between two of the buttons, so... I don't know, there's just, like, the visual effects of all the traps and stuff going off are really cool, like the saw blades here. I think there probably could have been an extra layer of something else on the fight interacting with the traps, or using them a bit more actively or something, but... The robot said he escapes and ends up as a hired mercenary in Eureka. Huh. I was not aware of that. So, Aubert said, fun to push the buttons, wish I could use them for not just trolling. So, in the Savage version of this fight, you actually have to deliberately set off the traps at certain points in order to handle mechanics. Which is cool. You just don't use them during the normal version. They are purely just a penalty. Okay, we're almost done the first leg of this. Let's go to 68 with one I've seen mentioned in the chat. It's the Idol of Darkness, aka Birdemic. This fight has one cool trick, and it's the portal nonsense. And to be fair, I really like the portal nonsense. For anybody who somehow maybe hasn't done this fight, there's giant laser beams that you have to dodge in various ways, and they go into portals, and then they come out of the portals. That's cool and interesting. It takes forever to wind up to those actual attacks. Most of the fight, as a result, is just a striking dummy with a boss that is half the size of the arena. And, like, the fact that it is basically just the one thing going on in the fight. Like, the one thing is deadly. Don't get me wrong. If you screw up the specific mechanic, your party's toast. That's why it's got a 5 in danger, and I think it's the first on the list to score that. Just, you see, like, 3/4 of a party just drop when that fight is going off, because people can't figure it out. But otherwise, like, the visuals are... they're fine. The music is... I mean, this remix of the FF8 theme, I haven't mentioned it, but it's a really good mix of the FF8 boss theme. But it's fine. Yeah. I enjoy the fact that this fight is spicy. If you don't like fights where people just die a whole lot, this one would score even more. Speaking of fights that kind of I accidentally wrote Endwalker there, didn't I? Yep, I sure did. I had to do that all manually. There's going to be mistakes. Okay, moving on from that and no longer calling attention to it, 67. It's Bismarck. Bismarck's here for a couple reasons. One, the visual and audio of this fight is fantastic. I'm really sorry. The arena's really cool, all the transformations it goes through are great, all the spell effects are fantastic. The fact that the boss is massive and has to be reeled in and stuff is, like, it's so cool. The music is so good here. Like, the things that this fight is doing well are really cool, and the concept of the fight, and like seizing control of the weather, and having the weather be the cue for different mechanics, that's really cool. This fight's boring as shit to actually do. That's the problem with it is, okay, kill a couple ads, now wait. Now jump on his back and do a quick DPS check. Now do another DPS check. Now wait. Now do another DPS check. It's... like, the concept of this was so almost really good, but the pacing of it and the fact that it's just a string of little DPS burst windows is... it just doesn't cut it. But again, presentation's so great, he's still getting a 14 out of 30. And he's almost out of the lowest third of the list. Speaking of which, also not making it out of the bottom third of the list. It's him, the Phoenix. So I have to say, this one takes a penalty on the visuals, because everything's just fucking orange. It was an actual massive complaint a lot of people had, and I don't have it as bad, but like, can we get some visual variety, please? That said, like, it's not the worst. It has a decent variety of mechanisms going on. I like all the callbacks and re-implementations of the coil-only Phoenix fight. That I didn't mention this. Coil's fights are not in here because they're not in the roulettes. They're not technically normal difficulty. The fight is fairly dangerous because the tells on a lot of his attacks are not transparent on the floor, and that tends to kill people. And like, it is a fairly engaging fight. On a gameplay front, the Phoenix is batting above this position of 66th. It's on the presentational front that I'm like, eh. Falcio, wait, didn't we visit this place with the Triad? No. This is in Endwalker. This is stuff you haven't reached yet. It's post-game. Yoshi said, I forgot about the exploding teeth. Yep, that's fair. Okay, there is one more for this list. So, the last entrant to fail to make it onto, or to fail to break out of the lowest third of the fights of the game. And the first fight to score 15 out of 30. To give you an idea how fast these fights have started scaling up in terms of how much I enjoy them. It's the boss with the funniest name in the game, Ratfinks Twinkledinks. Who came up with that? I want to thank them. So, here's the thing about this fight, right? First off, again, 15 out of 30. Fantastic. He has unique mechanisms going on in the fight where you have to deliberately, like, create elixir, stand in it to transform and, like, either knock bombs around away from the party if you're on that duty, or turn into a bird to avoid a specific attack. And those are the only real mechanics of the normal version of the fight. Like, other than him transforming himself, which is a big pop visually, and I guess there is either a tank buster or there's the one spot where everybody uses the transform mechanic. Otherwise, this fight is basically kind of a striking dummy for everybody except the, like, 1 or 2 players you have on guerrilla duty. Like, yeah, it has a tank swap. It is still spicy. People still die in this fight, which is actually really unusual for an earlier Alexander fight. I like a lot of the conceptual bits of this fight, but just the actual practical execution of it isn't so great. I see a mixture of I hate this guy and my boy! Flex said nobody knows how to bird. Yep. Okay. That wraps up the first one. Congratulations, you've made it through the first round. This video will end at this point. The second video will be available on YouTube channel. For those of you watching on Twitch, we'll just hang out. And I will see you in the next video.